After 30 years of building my husband's career from the shadows, Daniel dumped me for optics and gifted our shared credit card to his new muse. So I did what he never expected. I showed up in emerald silk on his boss's arm and made sure the whole industry remembered my name, not his. There's a way a man can cut you without ever raising his voice. Daniel did it over coffee. He took a slow sip of espresso, looked me up and down. Not cruelly, but with that brand of detached evaluation I'd seen him use on junior consultants. Then he said it. "You know, Patty, you're just not polished enough for these things anymore." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He didn't flinch. "Don't take it personally. These events, they're about image, branding, optics. It's not your fault the game's changed." I stood there, fingers curled around my handbag strap. I'd spent 30 years playing this game with him, ironing his shirts, drafting his speeches, booking his flights when his assistant flaked. I'd coached him through layoffs, office politics, PR flops. But now, I was off-brand? He kissed my cheek then, lightly, like a favor. "You'll be happier staying home." Well, that's one way to be retired, I suppose. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't yell either. You learn not to when you're married to a man like Daniel Moore. He was always careful with words, never cruel outright. He was corporate down to the bone, polished, strategic, and so hungry to climb, he'd forgotten who helped build his ladder. I hung up my coat, took off my heels, and stopped going to his events. Just like that. For the next 2 months, I played the quiet wife, made casseroles, tended my roses, let him come and go like nothing had changed. But inside, my anger simmered. I wasn't humiliated. No, I was activated. Because the truth is, I knew exactly who I was. And if Daniel wanted someone more polished, well, maybe it was time I let the world see what I looked like when I wasn't playing small. The call came on a cloudy Wednesday. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counter when my phone rang. Unknown number. I nearly ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Patricia Moore?" The voice was deep, direct. "Yes? This is Howard Klein. I'm Daniel's boss," I said, surprised. "Yes, I know who you are." A chuckle. "Good. Then I'll be frank. Why haven't you been at any of our events lately?" I paused. "Well, Daniel thought it was best I sit them out." Silence. Then, dryly, "Did he now?" I heard shuffling, then his voice again, lower, almost amused. "Patricia, I've been in this industry 30 years. I know when a man's trying to rewrite history. You were always there. You carried him through those early years. You asked the smart questions. You kept him human." I swallowed hard. "Would you do me the honor of joining me at our upcoming gala?" he said. "Come as my personal guest. I'd like the room to see what excellence looks like." My chest tightened. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Mr. Klein." "Howard," he corrected gently. "Howard. Why me?" "Because Daniel's been feeding everyone a story, and I think it's time we offer a second chapter." I said yes. Of course I did. But I didn't tell Daniel. Not yet. Instead, I sat with the news like it was a secret flame. Warm, dangerous, and utterly mine. I needed time to think, to plan. Because if I was going to walk into that gala, I wasn't just going as Howard's guest. I was going as me, and it had been a long time since I dressed for that. I picked up the phone and called Tina Moore, my niece on my late brother's side. 29, brilliant, with a closet full of designer samples and a wicked eye for transformation. She picked up on the second ring. "Aunt Patty, to what do I owe this delight?" "Sweetheart," I said, voice steady, "I need a dress, and not just any dress. I need the kind of dress that makes a man choke on his own ego." Silence. Then, a delighted gasp. "Oh my God, tell me everything." That night I sat by the window watching Daniel's car pull into the driveway. He walked in, loosened his tie, dropped his briefcase by the door like he always did, I asked how the client dinner went. He said it was fine. Linda's doing great, he added, tossing his keys in the bowl. She really knows how to keep a crowd. There it was, that name again. Linda Singh, 20 years younger, smooth as silk, and with cheekbones sharp enough to draw blood. She'd started showing up in photos beside Daniel, always in the background, always laughing too hard at nothing. My hands stayed steady on the teacup. Glad to hear it, I said. He didn't notice the edge in my voice, or the glint in my eyes. But he would. Oh, he would. The first time I caught him looking at her, we were at a networking brunch in Greenwich. He wasn't subtle, not to me anyway. His gaze lingered too long on Linda's laugh, her legs crossed just so beneath the table, the way she tossed her hair and leaned in close whenever Daniel spoke. I noticed how he'd straighten his tie around her, how he always offered to grab her coffee. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe Daniel was just grateful to have a competent assistant who didn't need babysitting. But that was before the comments started. Little jabs, whispered daggers dressed up as advice. Maybe don't wear those flats, he'd say. They make you look tired. Or, that lipstick's a bit loud, don't you think? You don't want to look like you're trying too hard. The worst came one Thursday evening. We were in the kitchen. I was peeling carrots, and he was scrolling through his emails, wine glass half full. Howard's bringing a few new clients to the Boston Forum, he said casually. Big names, fashion, media, even some lifestyle brands. I nodded. Do you want me to come? He looked up, just for a second, and said, honestly, I think I need a wife who fits the brand. I froze mid-peel. Excuse me? He didn't even glance at me. Just went back to his screen. You know what I mean. Presentation matters. Some of these people are young, polished, connected. It's not about loyalty. It's about optics. My chest hollowed like a rotted tree. He wasn't saying I was unfit for the room. He was saying I was unfit for him. I didn't argue. Not then. I finished peeling the carrots, set them in the pot, and excused myself to our bedroom. Closed the door. Sat on the edge of the bed, like a woman waiting for news she already knew, but didn't want to hear out loud. It had taken 30 years, but Daniel had finally said it plain. I wasn't enough for the image he wanted to sell. What he didn't realize, though, was that I had stopped buying his image a long time ago. 2 weeks later, we went to a neighborhood dinner. It was one of those events where everyone pretends they're too sophisticated for gossip, but they still rearrange their faces when someone interesting walks in. I wore a deep navy wrap dress, the one Tina had altered for me years ago. Subtle shimmer, perfect fit, classy, comfortable. Me. We arrived a little late, Daniel's doing, and by then, the tables were nearly full. A woman with sleek hair and long lashes came over, all polished charm. She extended a manicured hand toward Daniel. I'm Linda, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Daniel's event partner. You must be his sister? I blinked. Before I could answer, someone ushered me toward the outer table near the kitchen entrance, where the chairs wobbled and the napkins didn't match. I sat down without a word. Daniel didn't even look back. Linda had slinked right in. My throat tightened. Not from embarrassment. No, from clarity. I was watching my husband introduce a younger, sleeker version of me to our social circle. And worse, he was letting everyone believe she belonged. Back home, I made tea while Daniel recounted the evening like nothing had happened. They loved Linda, he said. She really has a knack for connecting with people, and she's always camera ready. That's rare, you know. I stirred my tea. Not everyone needs to be camera ready, I said flatly. He chuckled. You don't get how competitive this world is now. You either evolve or get left behind. I watched the steam rise, my hands steady. I see, I said. What he didn't see, what he never saw, was that I was evolving, right in front of him, just not in the way he expected. The next morning, I opened our shared credit card statement. The charges had been climbing for months, though I'd chalked them up to client dinners, hotel bookings, maybe even work gifts. But that day, I traced every dollar. Spa packages, upscale boutiques, lingerie, the shipping address? Linda's. I sat there in my robe, coffee cooling beside me, heart beating slow and cold. He was using our money to pamper another woman, a girl who smiled sweetly and introduced herself as his event partner. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I printed out the statement and tucked it into my desk drawer. Just one more chip on the pile. One more log for the fire I was building in my belly. That night, I asked Daniel about the charges. I kept my tone even. "Who's Grayson and Duval?" I asked. They charged $480 for a silk robe and, "What is this? Jasmine body polish?" He blinked. "That? Oh, just a gift." Linda had a rough week. She handled a client meltdown. I thought it'd be nice to thank her. I stared at him. "You sent a woman you work with a $500 spa gift?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You're overreacting. It's called appreciation, Patty. You wouldn't understand. You've never worked in corporate." That's when something in me snapped. Not loudly, not even visibly, but I felt it. A clean break inside, like something had finally dislodged and floated free. "You're right," I said. "I wouldn't understand." Then I turned, walked upstairs, and closed the bedroom door behind me. I didn't cry. I sat down, opened my laptop, messaged Tina. "Change of plans," I typed. "I need that dress sooner." I don't know if you've ever tasted the flavor of public shame. It's bitter, cold. It clings to the back of your throat no matter how many times you swallow. At that neighborhood dinner, when Linda called me Daniel's sister, I didn't correct her, not because I was ashamed of who I was, but because I wanted to see if he would. He didn't. Not a blink, not a breath, just a smooth smile and a distracted nod, as if the truth was an inconvenience, not worth correcting. I sat there through dinner, silent, smiling. I even complimented the salad. But inside, something hardened. My love for Daniel, that had already withered. But my dignity? That was beginning to bloom. When we got home that night, Daniel was in a buoyant mood. He talked about a new client from Seattle and how Linda had really impressed them with her initiative. I nodded as I slipped off my earrings. He didn't notice I hadn't touched my wine all night. Didn't notice I kept my back to him when I undressed. He was too busy checking his phone, thumbs dancing across the screen like a teenager. Probably texting her. At that moment, I realized something. He didn't think I had it in me. Not to confront him, not to change. He'd already put me in a box. The aging, dependable wife who baked lemon bars and smiled through betrayal. He had no idea I'd already started looking for a crowbar. Tina came over the next afternoon with 3 garment bags, a makeup kit the size of a suitcase, and a gleam in her eye that said, "Let's cause a little trouble, shall we?" "First things first," she said, tossing her coat on the couch. "You're not dressing for him. You're dressing for you. But we're also going to make sure you look so good he chokes on his canapés." I smiled. "That's all I ask." She unzipped the first bag, deep emerald green, cut on the bias, sleeveless with a dramatic drape at the back. Elegant, powerful, and just sexy enough to make someone regret underestimating you. "You'll need heels," Tina added, "but nothing that screams desperation. Think lethal, but kind." We spent hours trying on styles, tweaking fits, testing lip shades. I sat still while she painted my face with soft strokes and whispered affirmations. "You're not invisible," she said. He just stopped looking. That landed somewhere deep in my chest, because she was right. Later that evening, while Daniel was in his office on a late Zoom call, I went into our bedroom and opened the drawer where I'd hidden the printed credit card statement. I slipped it into a plain manila envelope and wrote one word across the front: transparency. Then I placed it in his briefcase. No confrontation, no accusations, just facts. Let him squirm in silence. 3 days passed before he mentioned it. It was Sunday. We were in the garden. He was trimming hedges, and I was deadheading roses. The sun was out, but the chill hadn't yet left the air. He cleared his throat. I saw the envelope. I didn't look up. Which one? He didn't answer right away. Then finally, you went through my statements? I clipped a wilted bloom. Our statements, Daniel. It's a joint account. He huffed. This is about Linda, isn't it? Still not looking at him, I replied. It's about respect. Jesus, Patty. Don't be dramatic. I haven't done anything. Now I turned. Met his eyes. Daniel, I said quietly, if you have to clarify that you haven't done anything, it means something already feels wrong. He didn't have a response. Instead, he tossed the clippers into the bag and went inside, just like a man to abandon the mess he made. A week before the gala, Howard called again. You'll be there? He asked. Yes, I said. Good, he replied. Bring your A game. The vultures will be out. I smiled. Let them circle. I've buried tougher things than their opinions. He laughed at that. I knew I liked you. That night, after Daniel went to bed, I sat in the living room and opened the old walnut box where I kept keepsakes from our early days. Notes, anniversary cards, a photograph of us in Rome where I was still wearing my hair long and he was grinning like a boy. Beneath those, I found something I hadn't touched in years. A letter. No, 3 letters. Folded neatly, postmarked from Boston, but never addressed to me. No return address. All signed. L. I unfolded the first. If only we'd met 10 years ago. She doesn't understand you like I do. Soon you'll have the promotion, and then we can finally stop pretending. I read each line with a pulse like war drums in my ears. Daniel wasn't just dabbling. He'd planned to leave me. After all we'd built. After all I'd given up. But here's the twist, sweetheart. He didn't. The promotion came and went. And yet he stayed. Why? Because the woman he thought he wanted didn't want him after all. She wanted the idea of him. The title. The climb. And when the glimmer faded, so did she. That was the first Linda. This one? Just another actress in a familiar role. But this time, I wasn't standing off stage. I was writing the damn script. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it tiptoes in on spa receipts and deleted texts, slips between the cracks of your foundation, and makes a home there, until the whole damn thing starts to rot. After I found those letters, I didn't confront him. Why should I? Let him cling to his secrets like a drowning man to driftwood. I had bigger plans. That week, I started prepping for the gala like it was a battlefield. I booked a discreet hair appointment in town. Tina connected me with her go-to esthetician, a miracle worker named Malika, who looked me in the eye and said, "Oh, honey, you still got fire." Damn right I did. The morning of the gala, Daniel was on the phone with a client when he strolled into the kitchen, smug as ever. "You coming tonight?" he asked casually, biting into a croissant. I raised an eyebrow. "You inviting me now?" He laughed. "Don't be petty, it's a big one. Wouldn't look right without you there." Just like that, after months of calling me off-brand, of parading Linda around like his polished new toy, he wanted to wheel me out for optics. "I thought you needed someone who fit the image," I said, sipping my tea. He waved that off. "It's just politics, Patty. These things change." And I was supposed to change with them, I suppose. Like a coat he pulls out for the right weather. I didn't answer. Let him twist in the silence. And when I stepped out of the car that evening, wearing emerald silk that hugged my hips just right, and makeup that made my eyes look like they held secrets, I didn't walk in on his arm. I walked in on Howard's. "Gentlemen," Howard said to a small crowd of executives near the ballroom doors, "may I introduce the smartest woman I've ever had the pleasure to work with." He wasn't being polite. He wasn't being kind. He was being strategic. And I just smiled, shook hands, and let the room remember what elegance with steel beneath it really looked like. Linda spotted me before Daniel did. I watched her from across the room, glass of champagne halfway to her lips, mid-laugh until she froze. Her eyes narrowed. She recognized the dress, the confidence, the arm linked through Howard's. And, suddenly, she wasn't the most radiant woman in the room. I didn't walk toward her. I didn't need to. I let her come to me. "Patricia," she said tightly, her voice all fake sugar. "Didn't expect to see you here." I smiled. Didn't expect to be invited. But Howard's a persistent man. She laughed too quickly. "You look different." "Different's good," I said, sipping my drink, "especially when the same old things stop working." She blinked. "Touché." Then Daniel appeared. He was coming from the opposite end of the room, one hand already reaching for a fresh glass of wine, when he saw me. His face changed like a man watching a ghost walk through the wall. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. That flicker of shock was all I needed. "Patty," he said, smiling wide and false. "I didn't know you were here." Howard clapped him on the back. "You didn't invite her?" he asked loudly, eyebrow raised. "I had to do it myself." Daniel's smile strained. "Of course I invited her," he said. "We just must have had a miscommunication." That word. Miscommunication. Like love could get lost in translation. I didn't linger. I turned my attention to the people who wanted me there. Executives, colleagues, wives, who pulled me aside to say, "You look incredible, and we've missed you at these events." One woman, Maria, I think her name was, took my hand and whispered, "Honestly, you were always too good for the shadows." I felt seen. Not for who I'd been as Daniel's wife, but for who I was in my own right. And then, just before dinner, I saw the final crack in the mask. Linda, standing too close to Daniel, gesturing toward the table seating chart. She looked flustered. He looked tired. She was talking fast. Too fast. And he was no longer enchanted. Just irritated. The bloom had fallen from the rose. It always does, when men like Daniel get what they chase. Because what they want isn't love. It's validation. And once the chase ends, so does their attention. The gala hit its peak around dessert. Howard took the stage to say a few words. I didn't expect what came next. He talked about corporate culture, ethics, leadership, then paused. "There's someone here tonight who embodies all three," he said. Then he looked at me. "Patricia Moore." The room turned. He went on how I had once consulted on a reorg that saved a division from collapse, how I'd mentored junior hires without fanfare, how I'd championed equity in the workplace long before it was trendy. Daniel was motionless beside me, fork suspended in midair. And then Howard finished. "Daniel, I know you've benefited from her wisdom more than most. You're a lucky man." Daniel forced a nod, the color draining from his face. And Linda, she looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. When the applause died down, I leaned in toward Daniel. "Not polished enough, huh?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The car ride home was quiet. Not peaceful, tight. Daniel's hand stayed fixed at 10 and 2. His knuckles pale, jaw clenched like he was grinding down every word he wanted to throw at me. I didn't say a thing either. Just looked out the window at the blur of Connecticut's back roads, lights flickering past like ghosts. We pulled into the driveway just before midnight. He killed the engine. Sat there a moment. Then, finally, "So, that was a surprise." I turned to him slowly, voice steady. "For you, maybe." His jaw twitched. "You made me look like a fool." "No, Daniel, you did that all by yourself." I stepped out of the car and walked into the house without looking back. He followed me in, of course. Started pacing the kitchen, muttering, "You could have told me Howard invited you. You blindsided me, Patty, at a professional event." I slipped off my earrings, dropped them into the little ceramic dish by the sink. You mean the way you blindsided me? I said. When you stopped introducing me as your wife? He stopped moving. I turned to face him. You called me outdated, said I didn't fit your brand, then took a coworker to every client dinner like she was a rental tux. That's not what this is about, he snapped. You humiliated me. I let out a soft, dangerous laugh. No, Daniel. I reminded the room who built you. His face flushed red, but I wasn't finished. I saw the letters, I said. That stopped him cold. He blinked. What letters? The ones you wrote Linda. Not this Linda. The other one. 10 years ago. Remember her? He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. I found them in the old walnut box, I said, with our anniversary cards. Bold of you, really, to keep your exit plan tucked next to my love notes. Daniel sat down. Suddenly, he looked old, smaller, like the facade had collapsed, and underneath was just a man clinging to an ego too heavy to carry. You were going to leave me. He stared at the floor. I was angry, he muttered, stressed. You don't know what it was like back then. I shook my head. Don't do that. Don't rewrite the past just because you got caught. He looked up. You think this is easy for me? He said. Living with someone who stopped caring about how she looks, who turned down every invitation, stopped engaging. I cut him off. Because you made me small, Daniel. You told me I didn't belong. And now that I'm shining again, you're bitter because I did it without you. He looked stunned, like the truth had finally reached him and burned. He didn't say another word that night, just sat there, quiet as I walked upstairs and shut the bedroom door behind me. The next morning, I woke early and brewed a pot of strong coffee, fed the cat, opened the windows wide, and let the cold spring air in. I felt something I hadn't in years. Weightless. Howard had followed up with an email thanking me for attending and asking if I'd ever considered consulting. We could use someone with your backbone, he'd written. I smiled and closed the laptop. I didn't need the offer to feel validated. I already had. Around noon, Tina stopped by with a grin and a duffel bag. Time for stage 2, she said. Stage 2? She pulled out 2 sleek portfolios, one with interior design samples, the other filled with listings. The Patty Uprising begins today. Apartment tours start in an hour. I blinked. You think I'm moving out? Tina tilted her head. Aunt Patty, you're not really staying here, are you? I looked around at the marble countertops, the polished hardwood floors. This house had always been Daniel's domain, his trophy, his gallery of success. I was just the frame around it. No, I said slowly, I'm not. We visited 3 places that day. But the third? The moment I stepped in, I knew. It was a sunlit apartment near the harbor, high ceilings, quiet building, a little patio garden just waiting for flowers and fresh herbs. This one, I whispered. This feels like me, Tina beamed. I signed the lease that Friday. I didn't tell Daniel until everything was packed. He came home to find boxes in the hallway, and me taping up the last one labeled linens. What's this? He asked, voice tight. My life, I said calmly, finally going where it belongs. He stood there, stunned. You're serious? I nodded. I've already signed the lease. And before you ask, I'm not taking anything that's yours. Not the art, not the silver, just the things I brought into this marriage. The rest? Consider it your consolation prize. He didn't stop me. Not once. He just stood there, watching as the woman he thought he'd outgrown outgrew him first. That night, as I loaded the last box into the car, I turned back once. The porch light flickered. A single moth danced against it. Daniel stood at the window, silhouetted and small, his hand barely lifting in farewell. I didn't wave back. I hadn't realized how loud silence could be until that first night in my new place. It wasn't sad. It was mine. The apartment was still mostly empty, just a few boxes, the kettle, and a hand-me-down armchair Tina had insisted I take for aesthetically pleasing contemplation. I curled up with a blanket, hot tea, and an open window. The breeze carried no echo of Daniel, no perfume trail from Linda, no whispers of old arguments looping back to start again, just peace. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small. I felt spacious. Tina came by the next morning with croissants and a tiny potted lavender plant. "For your windowsill," she said, "and because you smell better than sage." I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. She walked through the space like a set designer, already envisioning rugs, throws, light fixtures. "You need a record player," she said. "I have Spotify." Tina rolled her eyes. "No, you need Crackle. Soul. Something Daniel wouldn't let you buy because it didn't match the sleek decor." It hit me then. This space was more than a fresh start. It was a rebellion in soft fabrics and mismatched mugs, a place where I didn't have to shrink. I spent the week nesting, hung photos, framed a few old HR plaques, started painting again, just little watercolors, nothing fancy, but enough to get my hands messy. My hands. Hands that had once drafted his presentations, scrubbed his wine-stained shirts, packed his suitcases for overnight flights. Hands that had grown tired of clapping for a man who never clapped back. Now they belonged to me. Howard called again on Friday. "I meant what I said," he told me. "We need someone like you. Sharp, steady, unafraid to speak plainly." I smiled, stirring honey into my tea. "I'm not looking for full-time," I said. "But consulting, now that has a nice ring to it." He chuckled. "That's what I hoped you'd say." That Sunday, Daniel emailed. Subject line: foreclosure. It was 6 paragraphs long. I skimmed the first 2. Something about miscommunication and how the pressures of success can distort priorities. I stopped reading at, "Linda's taken a leave of absence. Things between us weren't what I thought." Oh, so she left first. That stung him. I knew it without needing to ask. The man who thought he was trading up had been traded out. I didn't reply. Closure, after all, isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you claim. One packed box, one cup of tea, one bold dress at a time. A few days later, I ran into Linda. Yes, that Linda. I was at the upscale grocery store near the harbor, the kind with olive bars and balsamic tasting stations. I was reaching for a wedge of Parmesan when I heard it. "Patricia?" I turned. There she was, makeup-free, sunglasses perched on her head, blouse wrinkled. She looked real, for the first time. Not polished, not posed. Just a woman carrying a basket of regrets. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. I tilted my head. "People do eat, you know." She gave a tight, tired laugh. We stood in the cheese aisle. 2 women with far too much history, and nowhere to put it. "I didn't mean for it to happen the way it did," she finally said. "Which part?" I asked. "The partner introduction? Or the spa charges?" She winced. "All of it." There was a pause. Then she added, quieter, "I thought I was winning something." I met her eyes. "You thought you were being chosen. But Daniel doesn't choose women. He acquires them. Until they don't shine the way he needs." Her mouth opened. Closed. She looked like she wanted to cry. Or run. Instead, she whispered, "I'm sorry. It didn't change anything. But it didn't need to." I nodded once. "So am I." Then I walked away. That night, Tina and I drank wine on my little patio. The lavender plant was blooming. "You should come with me next month," she said. "There's a fashion conference in New York. You'd love it. Smart women in better shoes than either of us can afford." I raised a brow. "Am I your intern now?" "You're my muse." We laughed until we cried. Later, In the quiet, I pulled out a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "I am no longer the woman he left behind. I am the woman he'll never catch up to." I underlined it. Twice. You know what's funny? When I was still married, I used to daydream about silence. Just 10 uninterrupted minutes, with no phone ringing, no "Patty, where's my tie?" No last-minute calendar invites to some fundraiser full of sharp smiles and softer threats. Just quiet, maybe a breeze, maybe a hot cup of something, and a book I didn't have to reread 6 times because my mind was always somewhere else. Now I had that silence. And it wasn't lonely. It was luxurious. 2 weeks into my move, my days found a rhythm. Coffee in the morning, windows open, emails from Howard and his team, asking me to weigh in on training modules, ethical policy drafts, and once a leadership coach who had no business coaching anybody. I gave them notes. I gave them better. "You're tough," Howard said on a Zoom call, half laughing. "We need more of that." I replied, "You need someone who tells the truth before the scandal, not after." That shut him up. In a good way. Daniel, meanwhile, had gone quiet. Not even a follow-up to his 6-paragraph apology. Oh, I know men like him. The kind who think silence is power. The kind who wait for you to miss them, to reconsider, to circle back like a lost pigeon. But I wasn't circling anywhere. Then came the gala photos. They surfaced online the way everything does, tagged on social media by some junior associate with too much time and not enough discretion. Tina sent me the link with 3 words. You. 1. Everything. I clicked, and there I was. Front page of the album. Patricia Moore. Emerald dress, arm in arm with Howard, smiling like a woman who had absolutely nothing left to prove. Daniel was 2 frames behind. Alone. Linda wasn't in a single shot. The photos circulated, first through corporate circles, then old acquaintances. Then my phone started ringing. An old friend from my HR days. A distant cousin I hadn't heard from in a year. Even Millie from the garden club, who once asked me if Daniel might help her son get an internship. "Girl," Millie said, "you looked like money and freedom had a baby." I nearly dropped the phone laughing. Then, one Thursday afternoon, I got a call I didn't expect. Not from Daniel. From Howard's wife. "Patricia?" she said. Her voice was warm, composed, the kind of woman who wore linen year-round and always smelled faintly of citrus. "This is Evelyn Klein." "Oh," I said, sitting a little straighter. "Of course. Hello." She didn't beat around the bush. "I wanted to thank you. Howard hasn't stopped talking about you since the gala. It's been years since I've seen him respect a woman in business like that. You reminded him what substance looks like." I blinked. "That's very kind," she chuckled. "It's very true. I've seen what passes for sharp these days, and most of them couldn't navigate a boardroom if you gave them a GPS." I laughed. She went on. "I'm hosting a fundraiser next month. Boutique affair. Real conversations, not just photo ops. I'd love for you to come and speak." "Speak?" "On reinvention," she said. "Lord knows we need more women talking about that. Real women." My heart did a funny little skip. I'd be honored. That night, I told Tina. She clapped like a seal and nearly dropped her wine. "Oh, Aunt Patty," she said, "they're finally seeing it. What I've seen all along." I smiled, quiet. Not because I needed the validation, but because it was nice, after years of being Daniel's invisible backbone, to be seen as a mind, and not just a silhouette. And then, just as the universe tends to do when it feels you standing tall again, it sent one last echo from the past, a text, from Linda. "Hi, Patricia. I know I've already said sorry, but I just wanted to ask, how did you survive it? Being replaced, lied to, walked out on. Because I'm not. For a long while, I just stared at it. Not because I was angry. Because I wasn't. Not anymore. I didn't reply that night. Or the next. But after a few days, I sent this. You didn't get replaced. You got revealed. That man never chose anyone. He used whoever fit the mirror he needed in the moment. I survived by stepping out of his reflection and seeing myself clearly. You can too. But only if you stop trying to be something he lost and start becoming someone he'll never deserve. No response. None needed. The next day, I bought myself a small gold ring. Just a simple band. No diamonds, no initials, no occasion. I wear it on my right hand now, not to mark who I belong to remind me that I belong to myself. It was funny how quickly Daniel unraveled once the spotlight shifted. For years, he'd built his identity like a showroom. Polished, curated, always guest-ready. He was a man of optics, not roots, style over soul. But the moment people stopped seeing me as his accessory, his grip on the room began to slip. I didn't have to do a thing. All I had to do was walk away. I heard through Tina first. She called on a Monday morning, breathless. Check your email. Now. I did. It was an internal memo from Daniel's company, leaked, naturally. Someone had forwarded it to a fashion exec Tina knew, who then forwarded it to Tina, who, thank God, forwarded it to me with the subject line, "Oh my God." The memo was short, formal. Subject: pending investigation, misuse of corporate funds, / concerns regarding client conduct. Daniel's name was third on the list. I read it 3 times before it sank in. He was under review. For expense fraud, for excessive use of discretionary funds, for an unverified travel pattern between New York and Boston coinciding with non-client visits. Translation? They knew about Linda. And worse, they knew it wasn't the first time. Howard wasn't listed on the memo, which meant he already knew. Which meant this wasn't just about money, it was about credibility. My hands trembled a little. Not from fear, not from pity, from adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment I'd waited for. Not to see Daniel fall. No, I didn't want revenge. But after all the quiet endurance, the humiliations, the silences I swallowed like nails, I needed the world to see. To finally see what I had always known. Daniel Moore was not a man to be trusted with power. Or people. He showed up at my apartment 2 days later. I heard the knock and didn't even flinch. I knew that rhythm. 2 quick taps, 1 pause. Daniel, always impatient. I opened the door, left the chain on. He looked worn, hollow, like his suit had shrunk around his shame. "Can we talk?" he said, voice low. I didn't open the door all the way, just leaned against the frame. "You have 2 minutes," I said. "Start wisely." He swallowed. "They're trying to destroy me." "No, Daniel," I said, calm as a lake. "You destroyed you. They're just finally telling the story." He looked down, exhaled hard. "I made a mistake." "No," I corrected. "You made decades of them. You made them quietly, behind closed doors, while people like me held your coat and kept your secrets." His voice cracked. "Patty, No," I said again, sharper. "You don't get to patty me now. You lost the right to use my name the day you called me a burden to your brand." He flinched. "Good." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small envelope. "I had these printed," he said. "Before everything, I was going to give them to you. I didn't take it." "What are they?" "Photos. From Rome. From our anniversary. I thought we could start again." That's when I laughed. Not cruelly. Softly. Sadly. "Daniel," I said, "the man I loved in those pictures doesn't exist anymore. And the woman standing beside him? She grew up." I didn't say goodbye. Just closed the door, let the lock click, and stood there for a while, palm flat against the wood, feeling nothing but peace. The next morning, I opened my closet and chose a dress I hadn't worn in years. Not because it was fancy, because it was mine. Soft blue, wrap around, fit like a memory and a promise. I wore it with low heels and a clear face. Today was the fundraiser. Evelyn had asked me to speak about transformation. She offered a podium, a slide deck, even a tech assistant. I said no. I only need a stool, I'd told her. And a microphone. She smiled. Even better. The event was held at the rooftop of a boutique hotel. String lights, soft jazz. Women of every age, every industry. Some in power suits, others in flowing caftans. All of them leaned in when I stepped up. I took the mic, paused, then said, I used to believe that the more invisible I became, the more valuable I'd be to the people I loved. Silence. But it turns out, invisibility is only praised when it serves someone else's ego. Heads nodded. I told them everything, not the scandal. The awakening. How I learned to dress again. Not for a man, but for a mirror. How I stopped folding myself into shapes to fit a room I no longer respected. How, after years of holding up someone else's story, I finally wrote my own. And when I finished, they rose. Not for the gossip, for the truth. Later, Evelyn pulled me aside. Her eyes were glassy. You didn't just speak, she said. You freed people. I smiled. I was just telling the truth out loud. As I left the rooftop, my phone buzzed. A text from a former colleague. Saw your name in the trades. Word is they've named you the new face of ethics reform for the East Coast Division. About time someone with real backbone took the lead. I stood under the stars, closed my eyes, breathed in. Not just air, possibility. You know what the funny part is? I used to think power belonged to people like Daniel. The ones who knew which wine to order, when to lean in during meetings, how to say nothing in 5 paragraphs. But standing on that rooftop, in a wrap dress and borrowed confidence, I realized real power doesn't whisper. It speaks plainly, from a full heart. And the people who hear it? They don't forget. 2 days after the fundraiser, Evelyn forwarded me a press clipping from a local business column. The unexpected star of corporate reform, Patricia Moore, takes the mic. There I was, smiling, confident. No designer labels, no PR representative at my side. Just me. The article was kind. Wry. The writer called me the elegance behind the ethics, and I laughed so hard, I snorted coffee into my lap. Daniel had always tried to sell polish. Turns out, authenticity sells better. The fallout for him was swift. By the end of that week, Daniel had been placed on administrative leave. Howard never said it outright, but Tina heard through a colleague that Linda had quietly resigned. Stepped down to avoid distraction, they claimed, which, in corporate speak, means she was shown the door with a box and a firm handshake. I ran into Howard by accident at a little Italian place downtown. He was alone, sipping espresso at a sidewalk table, the kind of man who always looked like he belonged in a New Yorker sketch. Patricia, he said, rising halfway from his chair, eyes lighting up. Join me? I hesitated for a second. Then, sat. We didn't talk about Daniel, we didn't need to. Instead, he told me about the upcoming Regional Ethics Summit and how they were, quote, overdue for someone who understands both policy and people. You're a rare mix, he said, of sharp eyes and soft edges. That's leadership. I shook my head. That's survival. Same thing. In the right hands, he replied. He asked if I'd keynote the summit. No slides, no scripts, just speak. I agreed. Then asked, quietly, would that make things awkward? Given the past? Howard didn't blink. Daniel dug his own grave, he said. You just happened to be the one who stopped planting roses around it. When I got home, I called Tina, told her everything. She whooped so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You're the moment, she said. You're the whole era. I laughed. But deep down, I knew what she meant. Something had shifted, not just in the world's eyes, in mine. That weekend, I did something bold. Small, but bold. I reactivated my maiden name on all my legal documents. Moore had carried too many shadows, too much silence. I went back to Patricia Ames. It felt like stepping into clean air. Then came the invitation. Not from a company, from a university. An alum of one of my ethics workshops had recommended me for a guest lecture. Topic? Accountability in leadership, what they don't teach you at orientation. I stared at the email for 10 whole minutes before replying, because the truth was, 10 years ago, I would have said no. I would have doubted whether I belonged on that kind of stage. But now I had something they couldn't teach in classrooms or corner offices. Resilience, with receipts. I walked into that lecture hall in a tailored navy blazer, hair soft, heels low. The students looked at me with cautious curiosity. They'd Googled me. I could see it in their eyes. They expected gossip. I gave them grit, told them what it means to be underestimated in a boardroom, what it costs to stay silent when something smells off, and how, sometimes, survival isn't about being the loudest, just about outlasting everyone who bet against you. When I finished, a girl in the front row raised her hand. "Do you ever regret not leaving him sooner?" I paused, then said, "No." Heads tilted. I regret the years I gave him freely, but I don't regret what I learned watching him shrink when I stopped making myself small. The room went still. Then came the applause. Not loud, not performative, earned. I stepped outside afterward and stood under the old oak trees on campus. I remembered the version of me who once stood at Daniel's side, clutching a handbag and a smile, hoping to blend in. She was gone now. In her place, a woman who didn't need a nameplate to be heard. I was halfway through my lentil stew when the doorbell rang. It wasn't loud, just a soft, apologetic ding-dong, like the visitor already knew they had no right showing up uninvited. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and padded barefoot to the door. There he was, Daniel. Same navy pea coat, same leather shoes, only this time they didn't shine. He looked hollow, not in a tragic way, in a finished way, like something had finally gone out of him and he didn't know where to find it again. I didn't open the door fully, just stood there, hand on the frame. "You didn't call." He nodded. "Didn't think you'd answer." "I might not have," I said. "Depends on the reason." He held up a paper bag, like some awkward peace offering. "Bread," he said. "From that French place you used to like." I glanced at it, then said flatly, "It closed 6 months ago." His shoulders sank. I didn't know. Exactly, he didn't know. Didn't know where I shopped, or that I'd started painting again, or that I'd been invited to keynote an ethics summit in front of 300 people who never once asked about him. Didn't know that I no longer cried in the mornings. Didn't know that the woman he dismissed had become the woman his colleagues now quoted. I opened the door halfway. "You have 5 minutes." He stepped inside slowly, like a man approaching his own confession. I didn't offer him a seat, or tea, or any version of comfort. Some apologies are better served standing. "I lost the job," he said. I nodded. "I know. They said I lacked transparency, that I blurred lines." "That's a diplomatic way of saying you treated the company like a personal ATM," I replied. He didn't argue, just stood there, shoulders sagging under a weight he wasn't used to carrying without me propping it up. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "About us." I raised an eyebrow. "Us?" he nodded. "I know I hurt you. I know I made you feel small. I was wrong. There was a time when those words might have cracked something inside me. But tonight? They felt late, like flowers delivered to the wrong address." "Why now?" I asked. "Why show up?" He hesitated, then said, softly, "Because I don't know who I am without you." There it was. The most honest thing he'd said in years, but also the clearest proof of why I could never go back. I looked at him, really looked, and said, "Daniel, I spent most of my life editing myself to be the woman you needed." He looked down. I dimmed my voice so yours could carry. I skipped promotions, missed funerals, turned down joy, all so I could keep your story moving. His eyes were glassy now. "But what you never saw," I continued, "was that I had a story too, one with weight, with edges. And when I finally started living it without you, the world leaned in." He swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve another chance." "You're right," he blinked. "I don't say that to be cruel," I said gently. "I say that because grace isn't a door you get to knock on just because yours closed." He nodded slowly. "I miss you," he said. I nodded too. "I missed me more." He turned to go, stopped at the door, then asked, "Do you hate me?" I thought for a moment. "No," I said, "but I pity the version of you who thought I was lucky to have you. When the truth is, you never really had me. You just held the pen while I was writing your script." He looked back once, then left, and this time, I didn't watch him go. Later that night, I reopened the stew, poured myself a glass of red, lit a candle on the table. Dinner for one. But I wasn't alone. I was with the woman I'd fought to become. The one who stood in her own light now, no longer casting a shadow for someone else to stand in. It's a strange thing, power. When you've lived most of your life giving it away in teaspoons, you barely recognize the moment you're holding it by the fistful. But let me tell you something. Once you do, once you realize you don't owe anyone the parts of you they took for granted, you never give them back. A week after Daniel's doorstep apology, the formal notice came through. Termination. He'd been dismissed from the firm without severance. His name stripped from the quarterly reports. His face wiped from the company site. Tina forwarded me the announcement with a one-line email. "There goes the brand." I didn't gloat, not because he didn't deserve it, but because I'd already left that chapter behind. There's no satisfaction in watching the house collapse after you've already walked out the door and built your own. Meanwhile, my own name, Patricia Ames, was starting to show up in the most unexpected places. An HR blog quoted me. A podcast wanted to interview me. Even Evelyn's daughter, a whip-smart law student, emailed to ask if I'd review her thesis proposal. That's the thing they never tell you about reinvention. Once you stop asking for permission, people start asking you for advice. The Ethics Summit was set for early May. I bought myself a pair of pearl studs and a pale blue silk blouse. Nothing flashy, just enough to say, I am not here to impress. I am here to be heard. The ballroom was packed, not with socialites, with strategists, women in power suits, men who knew they had to listen now or be replaced. I walked to the podium without notes, cleared my throat, and told them the truth. I spent 3 decades standing beside a man whose job was to lead, I began. But leadership without accountability? That's just charisma with a corner office. A few people shifted in their seats. Good. I don't regret the years I gave. I regret the ones I shrunk through, hoping to be seen. I told them about what it costs to stay silent, about how some people build careers on the backs of quiet women, and how the only thing more dangerous than unethical leadership is the culture that protects it. I closed with this. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a broken system is walk out of it and let the cracks show. And when I stepped down, they rose. Not all of them. Just enough. The ones who got it. Afterward, I was approached by a group of young women. They looked like the version of me I used to dream of being. Confident, driven, still hopeful the system would reward their integrity. One of them, a soft-spoken project manager named Serena, asked, "How do you know when it's time to leave someone who's holding you back?" I didn't hesitate. "When staying costs more than leaving," I said. "You're already paying for your own exit." She nodded. Eyes damp. We didn't say more. Didn't need to. Later that night, I got a message request on social media. From Linda, again. I saw your summit speech. You were extraordinary and terrifying, in the best way. I'm applying for a job out west, away from all of this. Thank you for showing me what getting out can actually look like. I didn't reply, but I smiled. Not for her, for me. Because even the women who tried to take your place sometimes learn from watching you stand up for it instead. That weekend, I visited my parents' graves for the first time in years. I brought 2 chrysanthemums, one for each side of the old stone, and sat cross-legged on the grass with a flask of lemon tea. Your girl's doing all right, I said out loud. Took me long enough, but I finally stopped choosing people who couldn't carry me. The wind was soft that day. I'd like to think it was them. On the way home, I took a detour through my old neighborhood. Just curiosity, really. To see if Daniel's house still looked the same. It did. Pristine, predictable, porch light on, even though it was barely dusk. But what stopped me was the for sale sign staked in the yard. I didn't cry when I saw the for sale sign. Didn't feel triumph either. Just a quiet confirmation of what I already knew. He could keep the walls, the granite counters, the expensive light fixtures I never picked. But the home? That had left with me. Tina stopped by that afternoon with takeout and a surprise. Close your eyes, she said, rummaging in her tote bag. I heard tissue paper, then the soft click of a jewelry box. Okay, open. Inside was a delicate gold necklace, a small pendant shaped like a door key. It's not real, she said, just a charm. But I figured, every woman who walks out of someone else's dream should get the key to her own. I blinked hard, bit my lip. Thank you, I whispered. Wear it to your next talk, she said, scooping lo mein onto our plates. And maybe one day you'll pass it on to someone who needs it next. We sat on the couch, legs tucked up, laughing between bites. At one point, Tina leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You know what's wild?" "What?" "If I had known you'd become this version of yourself, I never would have worried about you after the divorce." I smiled. "You worried?" She scoffed. "Please. You were wearing beige every day and watching cooking shows on mute. It was concerning." I burst out laughing, and didn't stop for a long time. A few days later, I was invited to an event in Boston, Women Who Rebuilt, panel of speakers, Q&A, cocktail hour on a rooftop, with twinkle lights and too much rosé. I wore the key necklace, a dark burgundy blazer, black trousers that finally fit just right. No Daniel in sight. No shadow of who I used to be. Just me. After my panel, a woman in her 70s approached me. Elegant. Silver bob. Red lipstick that said she did not suffer fools. "I've been divorced twice," she said bluntly. But I didn't find my voice until after the second one left with my startup capital and my best friend. My eyebrows rose. She grinned. He was predictable. She was the surprise. "What did you do?" I asked. She sipped her drink. "Started again. Hired younger women. Paid them double what the boys made. Got quoted in Forbes last year." I raised my glass. "To the late bloomers," she clinked. "To the women who plant deeper roots." I left the event warm. Not from wine, but from knowing that what I'd gone through wasn't just mine. We were a sisterhood. Not of scorned women, but of rebuilt women. Women who'd burned down old versions of themselves and risen from the smoke with steel in their spines and softness in their palms. That night, as I washed my face and pulled my hair back, I looked in the mirror and asked myself a question I never would have dared 5 years ago. What do you want, Patricia? Not what do they need. Not what should you do. What do you want? And the answer came, simple and strong, peace. But not silence. So I started writing. Not just journals or speeches. A book. About ethics, and aging, and starting over. About what it costs to be erased, and what it takes to reappear on your own terms. I wrote every morning from 6 to 8, longhand, in a leather-bound notebook Tina gave me for my birthday. The working title? Not polished enough, a memoir in sharp lines. Meanwhile, Daniel's house sold. Word spread fast. This town's not as big as it pretends to be. Apparently, he moved to a one-bedroom condo across the city. No yard, no guest room, no grand dining table for entertaining people who never liked him in the first place. Someone said he was consulting again. Quietly, without headlines. And without Linda. I saw him once more. At the grocery store. He was in the wine aisle, examining a bottle like it held answers. I turned the corner and made eye contact before I could pivot. He froze. "Patricia," he said, surprised. I nodded. "Daniel." He looked thinner. Not unhealthy. Just worn. Like life had finally caught up with him and asked, "Now what?" "You look well," he said. "I am." He hesitated, then said, softly, "I read about the summit. Heard it was powerful." It was. "I'm glad," he said, truly. And maybe, for the first time in his life, he meant it. I gave him a small smile, then walked away. I didn't turn around. Didn't have to. Because everything I needed from that chapter had already been written. And the rest? Well, that was someone else's story now. He was leaving it behind. Just like I had.